Ricky Bobby, who never met a sponsor he wouldn't push, has a huge Big Newton sticker on his windshield.
I think NASCAR black flagging for that.
He sold the windshield.
This sticker is dangerous and inconvenient, but I do love Big Newton.
Howdy and welcome back. I am so concerned the direction that they decided to take this WrestleMania with the advertising. I think we all understood that it was game on when TKO purchased WWE and they started experimenting with selling out the print on the ring. Obviously, they had already been looking to do various partnerships along the way, but wow, that really took it to a whole new level. It went from being something where they might highlight the ring itself, to the barriers themselves, to placing items on the screen, to they actually took the talent and effectively turned them into child's toys. The costumes weren't even done to what I would deem an appropriate level. This is the biggest event you put on all year long. Almost all of the stories are driven towards this one event on the calendar. This is your talent's biggest opportunity to reach a brand new audience. You get new viewership coming from all aspects of life that tune in just for this one event to see what the spectacle is all about. They're seeing a lot of these characters for the first time. In particular, the War Raiders, who haven't had a true representation in a WrestleMania setting. And this is what they're asked to endure. So we escalated things from just doing advertisements to full-blown putting costumes on people. Now, some of them were well done. Tiffy got to do a Barbie-esque Mattel entrance, which, you know, maybe it could have been executed a bit better, but overall, it was a decent idea. It was a decent entrance. I like the idea of the stage itself becoming a Barbie playhouse. That was really cool. I liked the thought of where they were going. I can absolutely vibe. But man, did it feel like a step down for some other people. I don't know if the Maserati entrance for LA Knight was a paid promotion or if they just wanted to get a cool car in there, but everything about that entrance felt ham-fisted. It felt forced. It didn't fit. It didn't belong. Just didn't work well. And that's awkward when you pair that up against Charlotte Flair coming out. And that felt a little bit more fitting. It felt a little bit more appropriate, but still a little bit weird. But the War Raiders. How ridiculous do you think those two professionals feel? They already had to come into the WWE doing a Vikings gimmick that just didn't resonate. They never got a push from it. Obviously, they then got their name back. They were able to get a push. They got the titles. They're entering into WrestleMania in a big event that didn't have any billing. The New Day is one of the biggest story opportunities from the end of last year going into this year. This should have been a spectacle. This should have been a really big moment for the New Day to really catch some heat, to get a push, and to really make this something special. But instead, nobody cared. They didn't give us a reason to care. And these poor guys had to walk down to the ring wearing styrofoam? Like, I understand a lot of the costumes, they are cheaper material that is made to look good from a distance or on camera, and obviously held up to close scrutiny. It may not look that great. A really good example of that is Cody Rhodes. Some of his more flamboyant jacket pieces, if you take the time to really zoom in and look at them, they're not an amazing material, but on camera, they look really great. It sells the character. But the War Raiders. What on earth are they thinking? Not only are they making their product look like a joke, they're making these characters look like a joke. They're making these professionals look like a joke. And of course, they have no choice but to lean into it and embrace it and do what they're told and do the best they can, because ultimately, I'm sure this brought a lot of money to the company. Man, what a stick, though. It really makes me wonder how long they had this partnership lined up, and if this was just a last second tack on to say, oh, yeah, we're going to fit this in here because we have this brand advertisement. We have these great characters. They're just like Clash of Clans. It'll work great. The business is going to love it. It really makes it seem obvious that this was a last minute. And then we break over into Drew McIntyre, who, bless his heart, he gets into the ring and he already kind of does this twirly thing with his kilt and kind of throws it off to the side. It's very much already a part of his character. But my goodness, they asked the world of him with this. I admit, there's a part of the cloak that kind of looks cool. The back of the cloak, I thought looked cool. It looked passable. I felt like you could do something with that. But what are those shoulder pads and those gloves? And then they put a full monument in the entryway that he then is going to interact with and pose with, and give him all the credit because he looks spectacular. He did what he was asked to do. They got what they wanted out of it, but you robbed him of that moment as a professional. You hurt his character. Thank goodness he was able to work that into a part of his character in the ring and, ripping it off and throwing it down. And, the fans that know him are able to look at that and go, oh, okay, clearly not thrilled, but did what he had to do. But you just look at how they utilized him for the last year. He went into WrestleMania 40, had a big upset moment. Well, not really an upset, but opened the match with Claymore after Claymore after Claymore, wins the heavyweight title, and then gets a Money in the Bank cash in on him and a little spat with CM Punk. And we didn't really do a lot with him. I know he had the full feud with CM Punk that spanned the majority of the year, thanks to the injury that CM Punk sustained. But they didn't really put him on any track forward or up. He was asked to stay at a even keel or go down. There was no run up of noteworthiness with Damian Priest. The biggest build that came out of that was the elimination at the Royal Rumble, which we know from reports that he wasn't particularly thrilled about how it played out, and maybe he got angry and upset in the back end and ended up leaving and not even attending some of the events afterwards because he didn't get his proper spotlight. There was some claims that maybe somebody else had to steal the show and get their attention, so he didn't get his moment properly, and they didn't really build it up to a big degree leading into WrestleMania. And this is another example of, well, did they already have this sponsorship lined up and they were just looking to ramrod it in? They didn't really do justice of elevating Damian or elevating Drew. I thought they performed incredibly well in the ring. They looked like they had a decent chemistry. I liked the match a lot. But this entrance, it took the whole front of the stage. He had to pose with it. He had to kind of dance around it. He had to do his huff, 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 where he kind of flexes his chest a couple of times and roars. And give him credit. It looked as incredible as it was going to look with his physique, with his attitude, with his everything. But it didn't belong there. And they're getting to the point now where obviously they're going to explore and see what can they get away with. And this is an experiment. If you think about it, not as WWE, but as TKO, they have a couple of products where they really want to understand what are these boundaries that we can push? What will the audience accept and tolerate so that we can try to make more money off of the advertisements? And I look at this as they were testing the waters to see what the WWE audience would tolerate so that they could immediately apply it into the UFC. I hope they feel rejected. I hope they hopefully without a penalty to him, but I hope they can look at Drew McIntyre getting frustrated, ripping off his gauntlets, throwing them down, getting the shoulder pads off. Oh, and that embarrassing moment where he was getting into the ring and he got caught on the ropes. You just made him look such a fool. I hope they look back on this and say, okay, we went a bit too far. Maybe we need to walk that back. When you look at some of their more successful advertisements, the ring, I've kind of grown numb to. It's fine. Put print on there, whatever. I get it. You're trying to make money. The barriers, I'm grateful they didn't do the bright white. When I saw that the main event was going to be drumsticks, all I could think in my head was this white background that was super bright and then their logo. And I was nervous that the entire match we were just going to be blinded by this vision of white background in our eyes, and thankfully they didn't do that. They handled that well. The dude wipes, I thought it was hilarious. Obviously, they had their mascot in the stands. Pat McAfee had this really great line where he called Dirty Dom a dirty dude wipe or something like that, and I thought that was absolutely hysterical. The Logan Paul entrance with the drone, say what you want about him, but I felt like there was an opportunity to use the drone to kind of go fly by the Dude Wipes crew. Those were okay, but I really do hope they take a good look at how much they're costing the product as a result of this. I don't know how much difference there was between the recording that went on TV versus the live event, but I remember watching the opening of night one, and they had the DJ come out with a couple of dancers, and nobody knew who they were or why are they here. And you can't really hear the audience. Triple H has moved to a format where he's not really doing pre-matches to get the crowd amped. And then the first thing you see to open the show is a advertisement on this big stage with this DJ that nobody seems to give two craps about, from pushing a product instead of one of your biggest faces coming out and having a big entrance. We're just all standing there going, what is this? And then the audio quality was really poor, at least for us it was. I've heard a report that inside the venue it was fine, but the presentation that we watched, it just seemed like the audience was not there. They were completely vacant, and I couldn't help but feel like this starting the show with this advertisement of a DJ being out there pushing some game just felt so wrong. At least start the show. At least let me get into the show before you start ramming that down my throat. Have it be before the show kicks off or something along those lines. It would have been a lot cooler if they had brought out this DJ before official go time, before the show even started, and have him start working the crowd, getting them into a frenzy. Because I gotta say, when Jey Uso and Gunther came out, it seemed like the audience just didn't care. And that immediately made me question the ticket prices. If you're in a price bracket or an income bracket where you can casually afford to go to an event like that, pay for travel, pay for hotels, pay for the extraordinary tickets, I have a feeling, on average, the person buying that ticket is just flat out not going to be as enthusiastic as a random Joe. We now have a couple of weeks where they went to Europe, and the European crowds were ballistic. They were insane. It was such a spectacle. It caused them to go over time in a lot of segments, but it was incredible. And then you go to the opening of night one, and that room, again, at least on my presentation that we watched, it seemed like the room was dead. Which is a real shame, because Simon Miller commented he was there in the building. He said the audience sounded fine. They sounded engaged. It sounded hyped. So maybe it was just a production issue. My goodness, where are your priorities? And while we're talking about the opening of the show, I really think they need to take a good, strong look at how they're going to position WrestleMania in these stadiums that have open tops. I don't know if I'm an outlier on this one, but having that much daylight when you're trying to really amp me up and get me excited under the lights, it doesn't work. I was going into WrestleMania really excited to see the Jey Uso match and see the story that they were going to tell. But the presentation left me so deflated. The entrance wasn't much. I was already confused by the DJ that was out there. The crowd doesn't seem into it. I'm not into it. And I feel like some of that has to do with the fact that they chose not to have a pregame of sorts, not to have a couple of matches beforehand or get something to get the crowd excited before they got there and warm them up. But I also feel like it has a lot to do with the fact that the lights were on. The sun was up. It was too bright. There's something magical about you fast forward to the main event and the room is dark. The only lights are on the stars. Their entrances look even more amazing. The flames are even more amazing because it's dark. So I hope the WWE takes a good hard look at that and sees that as an opportunity to improve some items. I do think going to closed top venues is something that's critical. And if they do go to an open top, focusing on getting good audio of the crowd being excited is paramount. Night 2 sounded so much better, and I don't know if that was because they were just more excited about the talent, if they had already been warmed up from the night before and were excited to see where they go. But the difference between the women's world title match and the crowd volume and participation versus the men's world title match, I don't necessarily think it's because of the people involved. Something felt different, and it could have been they fixed the production issue. Maybe that was it's simple as that. But they really did a disservice to both Gunther and Jay. That should have been such a bigger moment than it was, and the opportunity's now lost, and we're not going to get it back. So that's it. Let me know what you think. Comment below. What was your favorite advertisement? What was your most out of place advertisement? But goodness gracious, did they make some of those athletes look like an absolute joke? I really do hope they can take a look back and say, you know, maybe we need to really leave the talent out of our advertisements unless there's a really good fit and we're going to take it with the highest level of intensity on this needs to look amazing. I did like the Barbie Mattel thing. I thought that was a good fit. It probably wasn't executed as well as it could have been, but it was a good fit. I understand what they're going with. I like it. But man, how low res did the War Raiders look? Let me know in the comments what you think. How much are you willing to take? What do you think is an acceptable compromise for them to still try to be able to pull this type of advertisements? Do you think this is going to end up in the UFC? Are we just a testing ground? Do you think the other PLEs are going to have the same result, or do you think this is going to be reserved just for WrestleMania? I'd love to hear what you have to say. I hope we don't see it to this level again. I do feel like there is a happy medium somewhere, but this wasn't it. It took away from the enjoyment of the show, and I hope they recognize that and can see it as an opportunity to improve going forward. As always, make sure if you enjoyed the content, if you agree, or if you want to see more, like and subscribe. It really helps a lot. In the meantime, have a good one.